We are built for this network, for the strong, not the weak.
So let's start with the number one killer of men and women the world over, heart disease. More specifically, its precursor, hypertension, or better known as high blood pressure. Half of all black Americans have heart disease, and 90% of all Americans, regardless of ethnicity, develops high blood pressure in their lifetime. So, what is blood pressure? Now, when your blood pressure is simply the measurement of how hard your heart has to work to pump the blood out and receive blood. You all with me? Yeah. When your heart pumps, your heart about the size of a fist, when it pumps, it pushes the blood out. And that's indicated on the top number. That's the systolic. When blood is pushed out, it's carrying nutrients throughout your body. When your heart relaxes in between beats, the blood comes back in, removing waste, so it can be cleaned out by the lungs and then redistributed throughout the rest of the body. You all with me? That's the diastole. So that's it. That's all it is. Blood pumped out and blood being received back in. That's simple, right? Now, when your heart becomes stressed, then your blood pressure rises. And the American Heart Association says your heart should not have to work any harder than 120/80 millimeters of mercury to push out and receiving blood. However, high blood pressure medications are the number one prescribed legal poison in America. So why do you have high blood pressure? Is it because of genetics? Like your big former educated medical doctor told you? Can I keep it real? No, it's because of our insane, diabolical eating styles. For instance, black people in rural Kenya never get high blood pressure until they come into contact with the sad. High blood pressure is simply caused by a gunky buildup of plaque in your arteries called atherosclerosis. This gunky plaque is caused by a buildup of fats from junk food, toxins from junk food, and cholesterol from junk food. A diet high in salt, sugar, and oils thickens your blood and damages the cells which makes up your blood vessels. This causes your heart to have to overwork to do its primary and critical job of pumping out and receiving blood. So it's just like I stand behind the door and you trying to open the door and I oppose it, and so you have to use extra force to push the door open. You all with me? Yes. That's what high blood pressure is, except it's not somebody standing behind the door, it's your diet doing it. If you replace your junk food diet with a diet high in fresh produce, medicine straight from nature, that gunky plaque causing your high blood pressure will melt away like butter on a hot summer day. And I know, because I've done it, and I've helped my wife and my mothers and many others reverse high blood pressure. Now, if you keep on loading your body with junk foods, eventually that gunky plaque will rupture, form a clot called a thrombus, and you'll have a heart attack. Or that clot will travel to your brain, that's an embolism, and it'll get stuck, and you'll have a stroke. And my dad had 9 of them. But instead of making it plain to you, as I, your minister of wellness, have done, did I make it plain? High blood pressure, heart disease. You go to your medical doctor with high blood pressure, And as you all very well know, they will quickly put you on blood pressure medications instead of telling you to change your diet. And this is a serious problem, family, because blood pressure medications are some of the most potent cancer-causing agents in the world. Over 20 years ago, the Journal of the American Medical Association reported that calcium channel blockers have been linked to a higher rate of cancer in women. 10 years ago, a large trial conducted in 23 countries with over 8,000 people enrolled. They were admitted for non-cardiac surgery and randomized to take a common beta blocker or a placebo. After 30 days, more people died taking the blood pressure medications. And the drug-treated group had almost double the incidence of stroke. All medications used to lower blood pressure can cause fatigue, lightheadedness, and a loss of balance that can lead to falls and resulting hip fractures in the elbow. As a matter of fact, when the risk was investigated in people older than 70, it was found that anti-hypertensive medications were associated with a 30 to 40% increased risk of fall injuries. And this was most severe in those with previous fall injuries. The significant effect of functional loss and death was as severe as the heart problems these medications were supposed to protect against. It's a Band-Aid approach. It doesn't work. What it does work at is killing you in 1,000 different ways. And cholesterol-lowering drugs are even more dangerous than the high blood pressure medications. In 2010, notice there ain't none of this information coming from me. I'm just quoting the science. They performed a study on patients with high cholesterol, but they didn't have any history of heart disease. They analyzed over 65,000 participants and found that the cholesterol-lowering drugs did not reduce their cause of death. This speaks loudly to the relative ineffectiveness of statins when you consider that almost all high-risk patients have significant atherosclerosis many years before heart disease rears its ugly head. And in 2004-2005, they gathered together all of the studies without the control of Big Pharma, and they reported that the cholesterol-lowering drugs do treat a symptom in lowering your LDL, but it's not going to keep you from dying from a heart attack. So it's a false hope. Wait, but here's what you can get from the cholesterol-lowering drugs. Weight gain and diabetes. It'll impair your ability to exercise. Breast cancer, cataracts, mental disease, heart failure, kidney injury, and liver dysfunction myopathies. It's a crime against humanity to issue people these dangerous drugs without giving them an education on the power of nutritional excellence to easily lower blood pressure and cholesterol. And so here's the cure for heart disease. You all ready? That not only a few doctors will dare to give you, and there are some, not all of them, but there are a few that'll give you the truth. But here's the sad thing. Many people don't want the truth. Food addiction has so altered their brains, they want to be lied to. They want to believe that their condition is merely hereditary and can only be treated by drugs. But you all want the truth tonight, right? 1 cup of greens per day could reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke by 30%. Eating a half a cup of beans per day could reduce your risk by 82%. Just 3 cups of berries per week could reduce your risk by 38%. A fourth of a cup of nuts and seeds per day could reduce your risk of death from heart attack by 35%. So when you add it all up, greens, beans, berries, and seeds, you can reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke by 181%. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. What's not simple, and this is a whole nother lecture, is getting rid of food addiction. But I believe deep in my heart, you will overcome as I have.
My lifestyle was that an overfed, undernourished alcoholic that smoked like a freight train. I had ate myself up to a well over 300 pounds. Never at any of the major events of my children's life. I was very inactive. Well, I got at my computer and I started noticing a little twinge or a little dull ache in my chest. And went to the doctor. The doctor, the EKG checked out, sent me home. But because I promised him that I'd go to the doctor the next day, he let me go home. Well, I went home and I ended up going to the emergency room and ended up having to have a quadruple bypass. Within 6 months, I found myself back to my old ways. That's drinking again, smoking again. I started separating myself from my family and friends. My wife basically became my caregiver, and after another day of heavy binging on that July the 4th, woke up that night having to go to the hospital, and this time, fortunately enough, they didn't have to bypass me, but they had to put 3 stents in the artery that they had not bypassed earlier. And I just said, I remember reading something about reversing heart disease, so I went on there and I did on one of the major search engines, I did a reverse heart disease search, and I came across Dr. Furman's website. I started hearing things like, you can reverse heart disease. That I'd always heard that you couldn't. And it blew me away that here it was, this very prominent doctor. It was basically known worldwide and had treated, thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. But there was a forum, you could go to his website, you could ask a question and he would answer it. The fact is, I have a life. God gave us a real good body. And that if you give it the proper nutrition, if you really let it do what it's supposed to do, it's a pretty miraculous thing. Before Eat to Live, I was weighing over 300 pounds. I now weigh 160. I've lost a total of 140 pounds. My cholesterol was 270. It's now 120 the last time I checked it, with my LDL being around 60 or 70. I can't remember what it was. My triglycerides was well over 300. It's down to 68. My blood sugar is fasting glucose in the 80s and 90s. My blood pressure is now, last time I checked it, was 110 over 68, and that's with no medications. I take absolutely no medications whatsoever. I have an opportunity now to where I can, when people come up to me and say, man, didn't you used to be, who's this guy that took my pictures last year? And I say, well, you're looking at him. And then I get to have the opportunity to tell my story over and over and over and over again. That's the reward. I'd say that's the biggest reward, is because now you get to possibly make a chance in someone else's life.
What's happening, everybody? It's your man HRap. It's the last show of the year. I want to drop that science on you. Every week going forward, I'll be giving you a little health aid. That's from the Minister of Wellness. He gives you medical alternatives to the drugs that are being pumped into our system every day. Well, this is the TEODB Podcast. We talk about sports and culture every Tuesday, 5 p.m. on Built for This Network. I'm burning it down this week. Thank you for going into the chat room, each and every one of you. I really appreciate it. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button. And remember, this is a podcast. If you have to leave, feel free. Come back at a later date and listen to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is Built for This Network. Again,